welcome to What the Heaven. My name's Patrick. I've been doing a series about the afterlife and what the Bible says about heaven and the afterlife, but I wanted to do a special lesson on 666, the mark of the beast, because around Facebook, around Twitter, around the newspaper, again, there's all of these things about government surveillance and microchips in your skin and marks of the beast, and I just wanted to teach about what I've learned about that. Now, disclaimer, nothing I'm going to say in this lesson is new or original or groundbreaking. In fact, everything I'm going to say I've learned from some books. The only problem is they're boring. And the preachers who share these things, they're pretty boring too. They don't have video blogs on YouTube or have dirty trucker hats. So I want to just explore this a little bit. I'm going to keep it as short as I can. Let's get going. 666 is probably the most misunderstood part of the Bible and the most misunderstood part of Christianity. To a lot of people, 666 isn't 666. It's more 666 and I don't like going to church and I had a nasty childhood. No, I'm just kidding about that. Iron Maiden has a song about it. Actually, pretty cool song. The Omen is based on it. And there's so many people who think that this number is talking about Satan and something that Satan is doing today. But to many Christians today, 666 is a prophecy, a prediction of something that will happen that will then usher in the afterlife, begin the apocalypse, start the rapture, whatever thing is trendy that week. People think that 666 is going to begin that. Both of these perspectives are wrong, and we're going to look at a bunch of reasons why. First of all, John is writing Revelation as a letter that is meant to bless the 7 churches that receive the letter. It's a letter to bless. Secondly, John says in chapter 1 that the letter is a prophecy. And a prophecy doesn't always mean a prediction from the future. All prophecy means is that it is a message or it is speaking for God. A blessing and a prophecy. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. So there are basically 3 things that John outlines that will help us understand who the beast are. We're going to look at all 3.
The Omen.
I was at the hospital, Mr. Thorne, the night your son was born.
First of all, John is saying that the people who received the letter, these 7 churches in Asia, they can break the code. Why are people always getting this wrong? Because the code was referring to something that happened 2,000 years ago. Why is it not a microchip? Why is it not a politician in America or Canada or Zimbabwe? Because these places didn't exist in the 1st century. If John is saying that the code is referring to something in the 1st century, but the code 666 is predicting something 2,000 years in the future, John's a liar. And if John's a liar, then nothing in Revelation should be believed at all. But the good news is John isn't lying. The first criteria is this: 666 is referring to something in the 1st century. Secondly, John is saying that 666 refers to a man, and that with wisdom and insight, the readers of his letter can understand who this man is. Readers of his letter might have been converted Jews. If these Christians weren't Jews before, they knew Jews, and many Jews were familiar with a code called gematria. And gematria is like Roman numerals, but with Hebrew. It uses letters to represent numbers. Though I can't prove 100% that 666 is a code using the gematria system, I can make a pretty good case that it is. So the second criteria is that 1st century Christians know how to crack this code.
Someday, the mark of the beast, when it comes, will be very popular.
The third criteria is quite terrible. John describes what the beast has done. I'm going to look at my iPad right here. Look at what the beast has done. He did terrible things. So he created fires. He killed people who didn't worship him. This beast also followed a previous beast and ruled on his authority. The beast killed those who didn't worship him or the first beast. And then finally, and then kind of randomly, there's some sort of requirement for using his name to buy and sell things, some sort of weird commerce. So to summarize, he's terrible, follows someone terrible, kills people because he's terrible, and has his own money. That's probably terrible.
That's terrible.
So at this point, it's pretty easy to understand that John was talking about something in his age. He was not writing a letter for us. So why do we get it all wrong? Why do we think that it's something crazy or something scary or something that we don't like? Because the answer is actually not nearly as scary or as sexy as we want it to be. Have you ever asked yourself, why is John writing in code? Why didn't he just say, the beast is this person? Well, it's actually really simple. John was being careful. John has to be really careful because he is calling someone really important, someone really powerful, a satanic beast. He says this person's power is all coming from Satan. And if you're saying this about the person that I believe that John is referring to, there's a word for calling this person satanic. And that word is, treason. John is saying that the beast is the emperor of Rome. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert. The beast is the emperor of Rome. Now, I'm going to break it down here, but I want to again say that this is supported by most Christian theologians in the world. It's also supported by Wikipedia. Wikipedia has more knowledge than some of us Christians about our own religious text. So how exactly is the number 666 referring to the emperor of Rome? Well, first, let's look at the three criteria. First of all, it has to be referring to someone who is alive in the first century. It has to be a code that first century Christians can understand. And then finally, that person has to have done a bunch of terrible things. And then, of course, we have to know that knowing this person is a beast will bless the Christians. What the heaven? If you were speaking Greek, you wouldn't call him Caesar Nero. You would call him Kaiser Neron. Just like how we have a name for Italia, we call it Italy. How we don't call the city Roma, we call it Rome. But if you were to take that name, Kaiser Neron, and turn it into Hebrew, here's what it would look like. I think it's showing up on me right now somewhere. Okay. I don't know where I'm going to edit it later, but here's where it gets good. Let's use the Jewish code called gematria to apply each letter to a number. First, we have, I don't even know how to pronounce these numbers. Resh is 200. Semek is 60. Then we have one weird word, 100. Then Nun is 50. Vav is 6. Resh is 200. Nun is 50. Add those numbers up and you get 666. Mind blown, right? No, it's okay. My mind actually wasn't blown either. I felt like I should probably have a tinfoil hat for this. If you're not convinced, it's okay because I wasn't convinced either. In the first century, Greek was not the only language spoken. A lot of people wrote and spoke in Latin as well. And if you were talking about Kaiser Nero in Latin, you wouldn't have called him Neron. You would have called him Nero, as we do today. And so that changes the way his name is spelled. His name will be spelled like this. Somewhere. Okay, so now we need to add up a different number, and it looks like this. Resh is 200. Semek is 60. That weird word letter is 100. Vav is 6, Resh is 200, and Nun is 50. Those numbers add up to 616. Yeah, for some reason, not nearly as scary as 666. So why does this matter? Well, in 2005, a really old piece of papyrus was found that was actually a 3rd century fragment from Revelation. And the coolest part was it had Revelation 13:18, the mark of the beast, written down. And the number written down was not 666. It was 616. Was Nero a part of the 1st century? Check. Can you spell his name with a code that 1st century Christians can understand and break? Check. Did he do all of the terrible things? Check. Look at verses 11 through 18. Nero believed that he was a god. He was empowered by a beast, his uncle, that came right before him. A lot of people, even Christians, I don't get this, even Christians believe that he would come back from the dead. And most likely in the entire history of Christianity, nobody has persecuted Christians more than Nero. Those are all the terrible things that were predicted in Revelation. Nero did them all. But what about the currency? Well, here's where it gets good. Now, we know from the history books and from the Bible and from Jesus and from this one time I went to a museum in New York City that Roman coins depicted Caesar as a god, not one of the gods, as God. Caesar Augustus's coin actually said, "Son of the divine Caesar," Son of God. Does that sound familiar? How would you like it if that brand new Visa card you got, on the very front of it, it said that your president is God? You probably wouldn't like that, and neither did the Christians, neither did the Jews. Blasphemy. It's everywhere you want to be. There's one more question we gotta ask. It's the obvious one, the one I hope you've asked. Why Nero? Why is John saying that Nero is the beast in Revelation? Actually, that's the most simple. John is using Revelation to reveal the spiritual realm. He is showing his readers that there is more to life than what we see. By showing the Christians, by revealing to the Christians the spiritual realm, John is saying to all of them, we are in a spiritual battle. There is more going on. Our battle is against more than flesh and blood. It's like Paul said in his letter to the Ephesians. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. John is blessing his readers. He is saying the battle that we are experiencing is the battle of all time. Nero, the Roman Empire, they're not persecuting you. They're persecuting God. Revelation is saying to these churches, you are not alone. In 2005, when the 616 manuscript was discovered, British tabloid The Independent had a really cool idea for an article. They didn't interview Christians. They interviewed Peter Gilmore. Do you know who he is? I hope not. He's the high priest of the Church of Satan. And his response is really important because we now know that 666 or 616 has nothing to do with the end times. It has nothing to do with government surveillance or the Illuminati or the New World Order or whatever your friend shared on Facebook this week. Look at what Peter Gilmore says. By using 666, we're using something that the Christians fear. Mind you, if they do switch to 616 being the number of the beast, then we'll start using that. Gilmore is saying that 666 has power only because Christians are scared of it. It has no meaning to him, but we should love 666. I know that's weird, but why? Because it's a Christian code written to bless other Christians. When we see 666, we should remember Emperor Nero. We should remember him because he persecuted and killed a lot of Christians. But then we should also remember that a bunch of German barbarians destroyed, obliterated the entire Empire of Rome. The man who did the most to persecute Christians, he failed. And Jesus is king. We should be blessed just saying that. Nobody cares about Rome anymore. It's a cool place to visit. It's a fun thing to watch movies about, but nobody cares about it. Instead, Jesus, the guy who spent 90% of his life outside of the public eye, the guy from a tiny village that we don't even understand where it really existed. This guy has become the most important man in history. I feel blessed just saying that. Thanks so much for watching What the Heaven. I hope you learned a thing or two. I'm doing an entire series on what the Bible says and doesn't say specifically about heaven. I think that we've got this all wrong. So if you want to learn through some funny, irreverent, and weird lessons, I'd love for you to click on the links over there or over there, wherever they are. Please come and take a look and send me a comment or a message. Thanks a lot.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I.